When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello there. Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Join Up Dots. Yes, this is, I'll tell you what, I'm all energized today. I feel like I could take on the world. Rocky Balboa could be put in a room with me, wouldn't stand a chance. My wife could be put in a room with me. Hang on, I might think about it. But I feel really energized. I feel ready to go. And I know that the guest on the other end of the line is the same way because he's in Florida at the moment. How can you not love living in Florida? He's just up the road from the mouse, I'm sure. And it's every day. Every day is adventure time in his life. And he's a man who was first introduced to me by a previous guest and friend of the show, Ty Roxon. And he said, "Hi, David," in his American voice, of course. He said, "You've got to have this guy on the show. I had him on the show and he had such great pieces of advice to give. I'm certain he'd make a great addition to yours." Well, how could I refuse such a connection? So let's give you some background on who we're going to be speaking to today. He's the founder of the Wintrip Consulting Group, a global consultancy in St. Petersburg, Florida, where his mission is to eliminate hiring delays so companies always have the talent they need instead of empty seats. Now, during the past 3 decades, he's helped thousands of organizations like Bank of America, Boeing, Procter & Gamble, and the Red Cross, as well as small and mid-market companies such as Coles and Mako Surgical to make the right decisions. And this expertise has now been put into print and is now flying off the shelves with his latest book, High Velocity Hiring, How to Hire Top Talent in an Instant, being published by McGraw-Hill and through Amazon. Now, if that isn't impressive enough, then for 5 years in a row, he's been named in the Staffing 100 as one of the world's 100 most influential staffing leaders, also making Recruiter magazine's Top 40 Under 40 as one of the most influential executives under 40 years old. So when did he realise that getting bottoms on seats was a skill that he possessed and could build a business around? And what is the biggest mistake that people make when getting the talent that their companies deserve? Well, let's find out as we bring onto the show to start joining up dots with the one and only Mr. Scott Wintrip. Good morning, Scott. How are you, sir?
David, I am good. I've got some big shoes to fill given that introduction. I'm so thrilled to be here and so excited. Your energy is absolutely infectious, and we're going to have a great conversation.
Of course we are. That's what it's about. I tell you what, if you can't love every second of the day, well, not every second because there's certain boring things in life, but the majority of it, and the boring stuff try to make it fun, then it's just not worth it, is it? We're only on this planet once, and I think we should make the most of it. Don't you think, Scott?
I do. Every moment I've been told I'm turning in for something. I'm trading it every minute I have for something in life. And I better trade it for good. Just like I better spend my money prudently. I have to spend my time prudently because I'm not getting that time back. And I've got one shot at this moment and then the next one. And that's one of the lessons I've learned along the way. And so I cherish the moments even more than I cherish the money or the possessions.
And that, I've never heard it said like that, but you actually feel like you're trading. So if you're doing something that you don't like, you're missing out on something you could like, and vice versa. That's a great way of thinking about it. Have you always thought that way?
Oh, of course. I've always been, this much of a sage. No, I learned it the hard way. I first off watched my dad in a 30-year career that he didn't like, a career that ended with high stress and panic attacks, and he was miserable. And then I watched the rest of his life begin, and it was a life of semi-retired, and it really showed me how important it was that I love all aspects of my life, including my work. And so that informed me. Some of my own poor choices informed me. And now, for quite a long time, nearly 20, 25 years, I've loved most of what I do most of the time because I made that choice.
Yeah, I went through a big period, I think most men do, where we convince ourselves that we're doing it for our family. Oh, if you want to go to Disneyland, I've got to go out to work and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. And my sort of younger kids pretty much grew up without me. So I made a fixed decision when my last two came along and my grandkids came along that I would always be out at work at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I wouldn't do any extra time, all that kind of stuff. If it wasn't going to occur in the core time, then it wasn't going to happen. And to be honest, once I made that decision, Scott, my life has flourished. it makes me realise that there was so much dead time I was wasting justifying I was in a building, where actually if you focus and do the right things, then you can kind of have both. Yeah, you can have your cake and eat it.
No, I agree. I also think that the universe pays very close attention to what we say to ourselves and to others. And when I made the declaration a couple decades ago that I'm taking back my life, I'm not going to be a victim of life as I watched some people in my life be, the universe heard me and held me to the challenge. And one of the things that I discovered along the way is, that didn't mean that I was able to wipe the slate clean and everything was perfect and wonderful. My first marriage ended about 11 years ago. And you might note that I said that, I made this declaration about life 20 years ago. Well, I kept learning some things along the way. The universe kept showing me different paths that I could take. And one of them was that marriage wasn't a good fit for me. And the blessing in that was how kindly my ex-wife and I ended that marriage. We have a now 20-year-old son together. And I have another marriage. It's the marriage that I could have only dreamed of. So when we make these declarations to live the life we want to live, that doesn't mean that everything is peachy keen from that point forward. We have to then make a series of choices, and I certainly did, to deal with life on life's terms. And a number of things have happened. I've learned along the way that some of the choices I've made, I've had to change. I've had to change direction. But you know what? When I hold true to my values and the decision I made 20 years ago, that keeps me on the right path no matter what. And it keeps showing me what the next right choice to be is going to be.
Now, that's brilliant, because that ties into the join up dots metaphor totally, that if you really listen to your gut and you do what's right for yourself and you look in the mirror each morning and you say, whether this is right or wrong, this is what I think is right, and so I'm going to work towards it. You're generally not too far off the right track. I spent years doing what I thought was right for other people before I finally went, no, hang on, this is my life, and I'm going to sort of reclaim it back. But we do ignore that feeling inside us that's pointing the way, don't we?
Yeah, and we do it at great peril. If we ignore that feeling, we're going to head down the wrong fork of the road. But if we pay attention, I think you're right. We're going to make the right choice most of the time, or we can make the choice we made right. And it goes back to a quote I heard probably 12, 13 years ago. And the quote was something along the lines of, don't worry about making the right decision. Just make the decision, then make the decision right. And I find that that's one of the most brilliant quotes that allows me to live the life I live is I sometimes I pause and go, oh gosh, is this the right decision? But then I remember that quote and I make it. Have I always made the right decision the first time around? Of course not. Have I always found a way to make every decision I've made right? Yes, because that's a choice. And when you do that, I find that that's how you live a life of no regrets, because you're not beating yourself up over the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. You are making the best decisions and then cleaning those up along the way if needed, and not looking back with any kind of regret. You're always looking forward, making the next right choice.
I'll tell you what, we've started this show on a positive thing. I was just going to talk about recruitment, but do I want to go there? Do I want to go there to recruitment? Of course I do, because that's why you're here. So let's just talk about that a bit. So how did that come about for you? How did you become this expert, this the world's sexiest under 40 recruitment person, or whatever you was named? I can't remember what it was now. How did that occur?
Well, I'm going with what you said, because I could see the magazine cover with my bald head and my earring, because those are two things I sport as the world's sexiest recruitment expert. Let's go with that. So I want to tell you, David, it was all planned from the very beginning, and that of course, would be a brilliant lie. It was a complete accident. In university, I was a music major. I was a double major of music education and music theory, and as it comes out of my mouth, it sounds so drab and boring. And it kind of was. Music's a wonderful thing, and I thought that's what I wanted to do, but I discovered it wasn't. And the way I got into recruitment is I walked into a staffing agency in the United States, and I was looking for a temporary job. And a friend of mine had one of these jobs. He was a warehouse worker, and the thing that I loved about his job wasn't the work, was the pay. And the pay wasn't great, but it was the fact that he got paid every single week. And as a young college guy who cared more about beer money than anything else, to me that was really, really good, that I'd get paid every week. I'd get paid on a Friday, and I'd go and have the $5 pitcher and the $5 pizza. And when I walked into the staffing office, I had a very surprising experience because the woman across the table from me looked at me at one point and said, "Hey, have you ever considered working in this industry?" And I looked around because I didn't see any industry. I didn't know that putting people in jobs was an industry. And I literally looked at her and said, "What industry?" I had no clue what she was talking about, but it planted a seed. I had no clue that there were these other options out there. And to me, because employees are one of the most important assets in a company, and because a job is one of the most important things in people's lives, I realized this is very noble work, and it just stuck with me. And I wasn't really liking closing myself up in a practice room for 4 hours a day. I'm a little too social for that. And so I chose to pursue this path shortly thereafter. And that has led to a 30-year career where, as you put it, I'm helping organizations put the right bottoms in the right seats. And it's a vital thing. We can't connect our own dots very well, to go with your metaphor, if we don't have the right people around us who can help us connect those dots, whether that's in a company or in our lives. So for me, I think the work I do and the work that anybody does when they're involved in hiring is what allows us to be our best, because we've got the best people around us.
Now, the question that I always kind of pose, or at least I think about when you're saying this formative stage, when you get this idea and you think, yeah, actually, I can do this, is how you actually then make that into a business. How you lay in bed with all those voices running around your head going, "Go, Scott, go, Scott," because more often than not, they're going to be going, "You can't do this. This isn't for you. You need to be working in Taco Bell." How did you silence those voices?
Oh gosh, my stomach just churned when you said Taco Bell, and that was not a good kind of churning, just so you know. The good news for me was, at that point in time, the recruitment industry was looking for people. So finding a job in recruitment was not difficult, and finding somebody who would harness my gift for gab and help me turn it into putting bottoms in seats was not a challenge. The biggest challenge, the one you're referring to, is later in my career, after I'd become a recruitment expert. I got involved in this back in the days when recruitment experts actually referred to themselves as headhunters. And I had a very good career in that. And where I had the voices in my head is when those voices were challenging me to go do my own thing and form my own consultancy. And this was 1998. And I got to take you back to 98, because at that point in time, my son was one. I was the sole breadwinner in a household. It was my previous marriage. My then wife didn't work outside the house. She was a stay-at-home mom. We had maybe about $60,000 in the bank. And I had this dream, literally lying in bed. I had this dream of a consultancy that would take my recruitment expertise and how I've been eliminating hiring delays on the recruitment side of things into the corporations of the world. And I literally dreamed up the concept, the logo, everything in this dream. It was a Saturday afternoon. My son was very colicky, so he didn't sleep well. So I was catching sleep where I could. And I woke up from this dream. I sat bolt upright in bed and went, "Oh my God, this is what I need to do." And it took me a year to put it together. And the reason it worked is because I ignored the negative voices. I knew this is what I needed to do. I didn't think it was just coincidence I was having this dream. And part of it was ignorant bliss. I didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know, for example, that a recession was coming around the corner. I didn't know how hard it was going to be to build a consulting practice. Because looking back now, my ignorance about all the things I didn't know about building a consultancy were a good thing. You said it so well at the beginning of the show, is, when we're our younger selves, we just dive in and we do things because we have this belief. And I did. And I had this unwavering belief, but I also believed in the work I was doing. And I think that's the most important message that I have for anybody listening is, if you can find work you're deeply passionate about, it allows you to take risks and make them seem less risky. Because if you think about me at the time, I burned through that $60,000 very quickly. I was still the sole breadwinner. There were a number of days as I was driving to pick up the mail in my car, I sobbed because I was terrified that my family was going to go hungry. But I believed in what I was doing. I believed in the work. I believed in eliminating hiring delays. And now it's almost 19 years later. So I know it worked out well because I do work that I'm passionate about. I have a great book that's come out, that's doing well. And I have a life and work that's beyond anything I could have imagined, all because I listened to the dream on Saturday afternoon.
Good for you, sir. Good for you. Because it is, I've been through the journey as well, and I'm still going through the journey now. And I've had moments when I've literally just been clinging on the bathroom sink, looking in the mirror, going, it will work. It will work. And in the early days of Join Up Dots, it went off really quickly, really great. And then it died, and not one person really was listening. And I was just churning it out. Now I look back and I think to myself, thank God they weren't listening, because I wasn't very good at it, really. You get a lot better. And by sort of just keep on doing it, little things start to occur. And now it's just a groundswell. I couldn't have got there, I don't think, if it was easy. And what I mean by that, I think if it was easy, I would have just breezed up and kind of done the bare minimum. It would be like going into a gym and just lifting the same weights all the time and not really developing. But because it was 3 times as hard as I expected, I actually developed the muscles to make it 3 times as easy going on. Does that make sense to you, Scott?
Well, and I'm going back to my divorce 11 years ago. It was the most gut-wrenchingly painful I've been through in my life, thing I've been through in my life up to this point. And, I've told people who've never been through divorce that divorce is a form of insanity. And every single person who's been through a divorce nods when I say this. You're breaking apart lives. You're breaking apart finances. It's usually for the right reasons. I find most people who are ending marriages are in marriages that weren't working. But I'm having to do this. Oh, yes, and I'm having to work at the same time. And it was so incredibly painful. And work became my sanctuary as I was going through this emotional turmoil. And while it was not a contentious divorce, we were splitting apart this family. And I wasn't going to see my son every day. And it broke my heart. And I will tell you that I did some of the most outstanding work of my career during that divorce. And why did that happen? Well, it's because that made me stronger. It showed me exactly what I was capable of. It showed me the depth of my character, the depth of my will, the depth of my passion for what I do. It honed some of the edges of me and made me stronger in how I take stands for things. And I look back at it now, and yes, that marriage was not a good fit, but everything I did was part of my journey. I wouldn't trade any of it, all the pain, all the heartache, because it turned me into the person I am today. I'm sure you can picture this one, David. It's, if you have the butterfly in the cocoon, if you cut the butterfly out, it dies because it's not developing the muscles as you talked about them to get out and break through. It's the same thing. I wouldn't be the person I am today had I had a gentler journey. That harder journey made me stronger and gave me much more wherewithal.
Brilliant. I'm going to play some words that really summarize it. And if you listen to Join Up DOS enough, you know which words are coming. Here's Rocky.
You, me, or nobody is going to hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done.
What I love about that speech more than anything is the sort of simplicity of it, of just dust yourself down, get back up and keep moving forward, because it is true. The only thing you can do is move forward in life. And if you sit in one spot, you stagnate. We've all seen ponds where the water isn't vibrant anymore and what happens to it. But in kind of life, we almost allow ourselves to do that more often than not. We get into that stagnation and we say, we've arrived. This is where we should be. But of course, there's always another step forward. And it excites me now that I can't possibly perceive what's going to be happening in my life a year later or 2 years later, where 10 years ago I was quite happy to just be plodding along getting my salary, but now I've seen the other side of the fence. Now with your business, where it's growing to, Scott, is that something that still fuels you up with ambition when you wake up in the morning? Or are you kind of, no, it's all right, I've got a book in Amazon and I'm doing very well and we have nice holidays and vacations? Are the fires still there?
Oh, well, Yeah, I'm actually in the process of planning the next book, and that's a little bit top secret right now. But the fires are stoked and burning because I love what I do. It goes back to what we talked about early on, is if you find something you're deeply passionate about, that is the fuel that keeps adding the air and the fuel mixture to the fire. And writing my first book was an amazing journey. It happened at a time in my life where my wife was going through a journey with cancer, with breast cancer, and having chemo. And I was writing the book while all that was going on and being her caretaker. And it was an amazing, wonderful journey of, again, another blessing where that was my sanctuary away from what was going on in life. So I poured myself into it. And I had this amazing experience writing the book. And now the book's out, and I miss it. I want to get back in and start writing again, and I am. I'm working on the proposals right now. So I find that as long as I stay on the path, and as long as I do the work that I love, that literally feeds on itself and adds even more fuel to the fire. And the fire doesn't necessarily get bigger, but it gets hotter and it gets more intense. And it makes me want to do it more because I'm in a job of service. I get to help organizations with that most important asset and people with that one of those most important aspects of their lives. And that comes with a high level of responsibility. So continuing to do that just feeds the fire and keeps me stoked every single day.
So how would somebody come along now? For somebody out there who's listening to this show and they're thinking, recruitment, I've never thought of that. Is it something now that is even more valuable? Is it easier to create, or have they missed the boat?
Oh, no. I talk about this in high velocity hiring quite a bit, that the talent shortage is going to continue. We have gaps in skills, the middle skill jobs that require at least a secondary school diploma and less than a 4-year degree. There are not enough people to fill all of those jobs. So we're going to have a deficit there. We also have a deficit at the highest levels as well. Not enough talented people who have the skills, who are ready for some of the higher level positions. And while companies have gotten better at their recruitment efforts, there's still a shortfall. They're recruitments in they're experts in their business, but they're not necessarily experts in recruitment. And the recruitment industry and the associations that back it up are growing rapidly. Recruitment is one of the fastest growing professions in the world. And so there are tremendous opportunities, and that's only going to continue as time goes on.
So how would somebody do it, Scott? That they've got you in front of us and you have been through the journey. Do they actually have to have a brick and mortar business, first of all, or can they create something online?
No, so interesting about recruitment is you have recruitment professionals who are working from home, they're working from offices, those who are working from either location are working in local markets, they're also working across the globe. What I would say to people first and foremost is if you've never been in recruitment, first off, go get your recruitment education. It looks very simple from the outside, that you're going to place people in jobs, yet it is the hardest form of selling on the planet. And the reason it is you're selling the only product that can say no. You're putting people in jobs, and those people have an opinion, and they're your product. So they suddenly, can say, no, I'm not going to take that job. Well, if you sell a car, you sell a house. Houses and cars don't suddenly say, nope, I'm not going with that person. So this adds a layer of complexity to the sale that makes it so much more difficult, making it the hardest form of selling. So anybody who's interested in recruitment, it's good to go cut your teeth in a recruitment agency first. And you may just find that a staffing agency here in the United States, a recruitment firm in the UK or Australia or somewhere in Europe, you may just find that that's where your career takes off, that you love working for an agency. Or if you want to do your own thing, if you go work in an agency and you work with those professionals and learn the business, learn to do this hardest sell, then you can make the choice to do this on your own if you like. And you have incredible flexibility. I have a colleague by the name of Tommy who I used to work with. Tommy works maybe about 32 hours a week. She took the path that I just described, worked in an agency before she did her own thing, and working about 32 hours a week, she brings in a couple $100,000 US a year. Not a bad job working from her home, placing in people in jobs, doing work that she really loves. So that's the way to do it, is to do it the right way, learn the right things, and not assume that just because it looks simple from the outside that it's truly simple. There's a lot of finesse that's required to in this business, and best to learn it from the pros.
I was in banking for many, many years, and I was a sales manager, and I could basically sell anything. Any banking product that came in front of us, I could sell it. And when I decided to do my first kind of leap of faith when I was 30, I quit. And because of my sales background, I got a job in recruitment. And I was selling, and I do that quotey business with my fingers because I wasn't really selling. Legal secretaries for London law firms, and so secretaries would come in and they would need to have a certain amount of knowledge about legal procedures and stuff. And I hated it, Scott. I hated it so much because I couldn't get across the fact that the ladies were basically commodities, and I saw this recruitment consultant basically sit down with one of these ladies who'd come in with her resume, her CV, and he gave her all the big spiel and said, look, I don't want to just put you into a job, I want to get the right job for you, leave it for a couple of weeks. It was all that kind of stuff. And when she walked out the room, he just threw her resume straight in the bin. And I thought, that's somebody's dreams, that's somebody's aspirations, that's somebody's hopes. And I hated it. And I did about 6 weeks, and I walked out. Is that still, is that commonplace out there, or is it too big a question to actually ask?
No, I think it's the exact right question to ask. Whether it is recruitment or you had mentioned banking, we could look at any industry. We have people who are throwing things in bins, whether it's somebody's resume that they're saying they're going to represent that person, or it's the resume internally of somebody who's looking for a promotion, or it's, the performance review that you're supposed to be putting your heart into, and instead you're throwing it in a bin and you'll get to it later and you don't put much effort into it. We have people who don't show up every day and give their full selves in all professions. And that's why, we're blessed to have many recruitment agencies. In the United States, there are over 20,000. In the UK, over 15,000. People have choices. I'm finding, and I get to work with both corporations and recruitment firms. I work with corporations to help them fill their jobs faster by putting in processes to do so. And I work with agencies to do better work. And I find that the best agencies out there, the ones that I think are doing great work, treat people like stars. If you think about it, David, the stars of stage and screen have agents. Those are the people who find them their next gig. I had a literary agent who found me my book deals, and I got to choose one. The best recruitment professionals are talent agents. They are representing the careers of people. And I think anybody who goes out and is represented by a recruitment professional needs to ask hard questions, needs to talk about, how are you going to represent me? How am I going to be, positioned by you in the marketplace? When will I hear from you? What kind of things can I expect? And if that doesn't pan out quickly to be the case, you move on to somebody else. So just like in anything, find the good ones who will do great work for you and stay away from the ones who will not.
That's great advice. That is great advice for everybody out there, because one of the hardest things is trying to get through to your agent after he's taken your job. It's very, very difficult to do that. So we now know that if somebody is thinking of going into recruitment, it's best to cut their teeth and actually get involved in it in a sort of consultancy basis. Are there any other avenues where somebody, for example, has been in consultancy for a while and is now thinking of going it alone, but they're not brave enough to fully go it alone? Is there a sort of an interim step that they can take?
That's a great question, because there are people out there who end up taking the easier, softer way, or so they think, by not taking a risk. And they continue to work in an agency, or they work for a boss because that feels safer. And what they don't realize until later on is that wasn't the safe choice. That was the choice that kept them from living their dream. And so there's a couple suggestions I can give. First is, you don't have to go this alone. You can find a partner. I had a partnership. I had another business about 10, 15 years ago. It was a global coaching business that a partner and I formed. It was wildly successful. And we licensed and franchised people to coach people around the world. When Jay and I got into that partnership, it taught me how to have a partnership. And we did something brilliant, I think. We looked at each other, because we were friends before we were partners. And we said, we're going to run an experiment. We're going to work together for about 8 weeks. And at the end of 8 weeks, we're going to reevaluate how this is going. And if it's going well, we're going to continue. And if not, we're going to part friends. And then we set expectations with one another about what that looked like. And 10 weeks went by before we realized that we'd passed 8 weeks. And we looked at each other and said, well, we guess this is going well. We're still going to look at those questions that we agreed to ask, but we continue the partnership. I believe that all partnerships are an experiment. Just like in dating, we date somebody before we marry them. I think the same thing happens here is, think about the people you work well with, find somebody that you can partner with and start it out as an experiment. Now, a second path that people can take is if you really want to go it alone, don't be alone. There are these co-work facilities and executive suites and office setups where you can go work around other professionals who don't necessarily do what you do, but you can have people that you can lean on and talk to. So those two paths can make it seem less risky because you can have people around you who support you, who are there to talk to, who can be a friend and an ally and a sounding board, versus you just staying in the job that's not your dream. You can go live your dream by doing it and not going it alone.
I think that is brilliant advice, because certainly in the very first stages of me creating my business, I didn't have anyone to turn to. I just kind of made it up as I went along. And some things I look back on and I think, thank God I had no one to turn to, because, I created different ways of doing it where I might have just followed the path that everybody else sort of dictated. But I like that co-working space because it can become quite lonely to a regard. I find it's loneliest in my life at Christmas. At Christmas, my wife gets all these invites to go off to these Christmas parties and stuff, and I don't get anything. And when I was in employment land, there was a Christmas party all the time. So it can become very lonely. So that shared working space is a great way to bridge that gap, isn't it?
It is. And since you're talking about the Christmas holidays, I very strategically book client gigs in early to mid-December because inevitably they invite me to their parties. And, you're right about that. That's the piece I miss. I felt a little left out, and it's one of those ongoing lessons I've gotten in the past 18 years of having my own consultancy is I have parties. I just go party with other people. And they're so grateful to have me there because I've impacted their organization. I've either helped them implement a process that lets them hire faster, or I've helped their recruitment firm do better business. And so they're very grateful. And I always get gifts and I always have good food and I didn't have to pay for any of it. It's a brilliant thing. So, I find that being lonely is a choice and having solitude from time to time is something that is a blessing. And I can live those two things when I'm very mindful about my needs. I have I work from my home office, but I have a co-work facility I go to when I need to be around people. And I strategically plan things ahead, like I just talked about at Christmas time, so I'm not alone in times where I could feel lonely.
So could you go back? Could you go back, Scott, to working for the man? Or is it now? No, I could never do it.
Oh, the one question that you had to ask, and it's the question that always makes me nauseous because every time I think about working for the man, and there it is, I get this just churning in the pit of my stomach, kind of like when you mentioned Taco Bell. I've been on my own for 18, almost 19 years. It'll be 19 years in January. And the thought of working for somebody else literally makes me nauseous. And it's not that other people are horrible to work with. It's just I've spent 18 years making the decisions, doing my own thing, having incredible flexibility. That would be very hard. Of course I could do it. I'd have to take a lot of Dramamine along the way so I wouldn't be nauseous. And look, I've got the best of both worlds because I do work for other people, but I also get to move on and work with different people. What I find is I'm undiagnosed ADD, but I know I have it, and I get bored very easily. I'm really good at what I do, so I get things done quickly. I do great work, and then I get to move on to either something different in that organization, a different project, or a different organization, and it keeps me, keeps my work interesting. Versus if I were in the same organization doing the same thing, I would get bored, and that's where the nausea comes from. It's not about the people; it's about the work itself. So I'm in something that's well suited for me, so it keeps the nausea away and makes the Dramamine completely optional.
I could never go back, Scott. I could never go back. Even if they paid me £1 million and filled a room up with Katy Perry and loads of alcohol, it's never going to happen. I just couldn't. And even at its worst, and it has been rubbish at times, even at its worst, I look back on it and think I could take that and I could take it double helpings, because I know where it's leading to more than what I had before. And I had a very comfortable job. I had a few personality clashes with people due to the fact that I'm a bit flippant, a bit sort of entrepreneurial, maverick kind of character. They weren't, but I could never go back, even if they offered me that room of all my dreams and my flesh passions all squeezed into one place.
Well, yeah, and look, I need to point out something that I think you're talking about that I'm bringing up, and that is know thyself. I know that, and like you, I'm irreverent, I'm quirky, I don't like to play by the rules, especially when there's somebody else's rules. And I know myself very well. I'm 50 years old. I turned 50 this year, and I know who I am. I know what I need. I know what I want. I know what does work, and I know what doesn't. And so if I don't honor that, I'm going to be miserable. And it goes back to what I described with my dad and the job he had. I would be that guy, and I've always vowed not to be that guy. Because I know myself. I know that doing the kind of work that I do in the way I do it works for me, and anything shy of that isn't going to work. So I hear you describing the same thing, David, is you know yourself, you know your personality, you know what works, and you honor that. And I think that's the most important thing I want your listeners to hear is go on this journey and be really honest with yourself about what works and what does not. And it doesn't mean you have to quit your job tomorrow and go on your own. It just could mean you need a different job. But if you're very clear on who you are and what you need and what you value, you will make that next right choice. And if you don't make the right choice, you can make the choice right, as we talked about earlier in the show.
Let's play some words that perfectly summarize what we're talking about on this stage of the conversation. Said by Steve Jobs, became the whole theme of Join Up Dots. Here they are.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. Because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart, even when it leads you off the well-worn path. And that will make all the difference.
Now, when I first started listening to that speech, I used to think that you were believing, or you're trusting, and this is me personally, trusting in God or intuition or whatever he was saying. But now I just kind of think, no, you trust yourself. As we said right at the very beginning, trust yourself that it will work, and then go out and make it work. And when you listen to those words, do they sort of empower you like they still do me every single day?
They do. I've heard that speech many times. It's one of my favorite parts, the clip that you played of the speech. And, you know, here's the interesting thing that I think most people don't think about. There's one person in their life who has extreme credibility. In fact, you'll believe what that person tells you every single time. And that person's you. I will believe everything I tell myself, good or bad. So I better be very mindful what I tell myself. If I believe I can do something and tell myself that, it will happen. And if I tell myself I can't, I'll be right every single time. So we have to listen very, very carefully to that inner voice. And I agree with you. Whatever your belief system, it's okay. And I honor that. That inner voice within you, whether you think it comes from God or it comes from you, pay very careful attention to what that voice is saying and what you're saying to that voice, because it's going to help create your destiny.
And it sort of links up the old Henry Ford, doesn't it? It doesn't matter if you think you can or you think you can't. You're right. And all these speeches, they're all built around truths. But you can't hear them until you're ready to hear them, I suppose is what I'm saying. You know, you could listen to that speech. You could listen to Join Up Dots every single day for months and months and months, and then one conversation, one episode suddenly hits home. And for me, it was when I was first given that Steve Jobs speech. Bizarrely, it was given me, and I remember almost feeling like my life had changed. I read this speech and I thought, yes, I've got to do something. I'm only here on this planet once. Let's go out and have fun. Stay young and be foolish, or whatever he says.
Yeah, I completely agree. It goes back to what we started with, David, this is what I'm trading my life for each day. I'm trading moments of my life for either doing good, valuable work and things that fulfill me, or I'm trading them for something that's going to disappoint me. I think I know which of the choices I'd rather make. I'd rather be fulfilled and satisfied versus disappointed in the investment I'm making each moment of the day.
Okay, so before we sort of bring the show to an end, Scott, I'm going to give you a magic wand. I'm going to send it across by the power of Skype. And with this magic wand, it will give you a big wish. And you could wave it over the recruitment consultancy business and you could change it in whatever way you would. What would you do?
I would change the business model permanently that recruitment agencies line up talent before organizations need it, and that they can fulfill jobs the instant they open. And I want that because it's already happening. I want it to happen more. There's no surprise that jobs are going to open. And when they do, every moment it's open, it's like an open wound in that organization. So I want agencies to have more of the talent when it's needed. It's why I wrote the book. It tells them how to do that. But I also want corporations to do the same thing. There are internal recruitment mechanisms in HR and talent acquisition who can do the same thing. They too can cultivate talent before it's needed. The hiring managers can play a role in it. Everybody can be lining up more talent, just like the product vendors line up products before they're needed. We can line up people before they're needed as well. And if that happens, businesses can focus more on doing work versus filling jobs.
Well, I'm going to want that wand back because I'm going to use it as well for the Katy Perry thing that I've got going on. So we can share it. Is that okay?
Worked, especially because it's a Katy Perry thing. How could I refuse, David?
Nah, absolutely. And you can't refuse this either because I'm going to send you on a journey now that brings the show to an end. And this is the part of the show that we call the Sermon on the Mic, when we send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if you could go back in time and speak to the young Scott, what age would you choose and what advice would you give? Well, we're going to find out because I'm going to play the music, and when it fades, you're up. This is the Sermon on the Mic.
With the best bit of the show, the Sermon on the Mic, the Sermon on the Mic.
Well, hello, Scott. It's Big Scott. And, I'm 50 years old, and I've seen a lot, and I've got some advice for you today because you're 11 years old, and you've got your whole life ahead of you. And I've noticed something. I've noticed that you say things to yourself, and sometimes they're positive, and sometimes they're not. In fact, you've got some pretty negative people around you. You've got kids in school who pick on you because you're more the artistic kind of guy versus the athlete, and that doesn't float well in these schools. They look at the artists and they look at the actors like you and the musicians, and that's not cool. And so you tell yourself things. You tell yourself negative things, and sometimes you tell yourself positive things. And I'm here to tell you that at the age of 50, I know something, and I want you to take this to heart. I want you to be mindful of every single thing you tell yourself, because what you tell yourself, it's exactly what's going to happen. See, when I told myself I could write a book and I could land several deals, and I could, get a book deal and have a book published and have it be a bestseller in a couple categories with a big publisher like McGraw-Hill, that's exactly what happened. When I told myself I could form a business and have it be successful, that happened. When I told myself that I could serve companies across the globe, it happened. But also, I've told myself things that I couldn't do, and I was right about those every single time. So I want you to tell yourself you can, because when you do, you're right. And be careful with the can'ts, because if you do that, you'll be right about that as well. You are a powerful person. You and every other human being out there, you are here for a reason. And you just need to find that reason. And so make it a journey. Tell yourself you can do things. Try out different things. And start noticing what you're passionate about. And be mindful of what you say. What you say is what you become, Scott. And if you say positive things are going to happen. And you know what? Here's the other thing. It's probably the most important thing I'm going to tell you. And that is, I was told at one point, I'm not responsible for my first thought, but I am responsible for my next action. And at the age of 50, my thinking is stinking sometimes. My first thought is negative. It just happens. I think it's human. Everybody I know does this. So know that you're not responsible for the first thought. You may tell yourself you can't or you shouldn't or you're not worthy. You know what? You don't have to stick with that thought. You can actually change it. You can say, I'm not listening to that. I'm going to go do this because I believe I can. Keep in mind, you're not responsible for the first thought. You are responsible for your next action. And if you do that, your life's going to turn out well, because mine sure has. And I'm glad I got that advice, and I'm really glad I can share it with you.
Oh, I'll tell you what, if I could send you back in time to have a word with my younger self as well, I think that is what I want to hear. It is so powerful on so many levels. Scott, what is the number one best way that our audience can connect with you, sir?
So if they go to my book website, highvelocityhiring.com, people can learn about the book. It's available now from all of your favorite booksellers across the globe. From there, I would encourage you, click on the upper part of the website to resources, and there's tons of resources. I'm an active blogger, podcaster, lots of videos, more about to come out, and all of those resources are absolutely free.
We will have all the links on the show notes to make it as easy as possible for everyone. But Scott, thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up those dots. And please come back again when you've got more dots to join up, because I do believe that by joining up the dots and connecting our past is the best way to build our futures. Scott Wintrip, thank you so much.
Thank you, David, and thank you for this service that you give to the people who listen.
Scott Wintrip from Florida, recording as the hurricane was starting to come his way. He wasn't sure whether it was going to hit him or pass by, whatever. But of course, we wish him all the safety. Everybody out there at the moment that's struggling with the storms. Be safe, and don't be stupid. And for all of you guys listening to these shows as well, be safe with your thinking, but don't be too safe with your thinking. As Scott was saying, take risks and be creative and enjoy yourself. It's your life. I reckon I say the same thing every single episode, but that's the whole vibe of Join Up Dots. The fact that one episode, you'll listen to one episode and it will hit home. And that would be the moment. That would be the key to the door that will start you thinking about, actually, am I safe being at work or am I safer going for it? And you don't have to go for it all overnight. You can just sort of work towards it, create some income and build up your confidence and stuff. But certainly it's a much nicer life once you do. Thank you so much for listening to Join Up Dots. I really do appreciate everybody who contacts us, leaves ratings and reviews and everything that sort of helps grow the show. We couldn't do it without you. And until next time, we'll see you again.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice That Every Successful Entrepreneur Practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.